Over to you, Heidi.
Welcome, everyone, to the Henry Stewart event for Technology for Museums. This particular session is about the future of museum technology and a conversation about what are the driving factors. I will introduce myself and have the panelists introduce themselves. And I want to encourage everybody, if you have any questions, please put your questions in the Q&A section that we will be monitoring in the Hublio application. So my name is Heidi Quicksilver. I am currently the Vice President and CIO at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, right in the heart of Silicon Valley. Very interesting place to be in a museum community when we're talking about technology. I will let Abby and Marcus introduce themselves. Abby?
Hi, I am Abby. I'm Abby Bysshe. I'm the Chief Experience and Strategy Officer at the Franklin Institute, a science center in Philadelphia. And we are turning 200 years old next year. So technology in a building and institution of our age is also a very interesting conversation.
Marcus?
Hi. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Marcus Harshaw, and I'm the Senior Director for Museum Experiences at Carnegie Science Center, which is the Science Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, yeah.
I would love to start out our conversation really with kind of a brief summary of what you think are the main driving factors for technology in your museums at this moment.
Marcus, do you want to start, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can start. So, and that's a great question, Heidi. I think so. Here at Carnegie Science Center, we just opened a brand new permanent exhibition, Mars: The Next Giant Leap, and in that design and development process, we really wrestled with sort of how much technology that we wanted to introduce in that exhibition, and really the driving force for the technology we put in that space really came down to the community's expectations and our stakeholders' expectations of us as a science center. How can we be the science center that promotes technology and engineering and all these things, and be the science center of the future if we don't have a firm and kind of solid foundation of using technology? And I think one of the things that's been really interesting with that for us is some of the technologies that we were able to incorporate in the exhibition, like touchscreens, not particularly new technologies by far, but definitely technology that is new to us and new to our audience, and makes it a little bit more exciting.
And I'll definitely kind of echo that statement. I think we are in a place as an organization where we're starting to actually redesign all of our permanent exhibitions for the first time in quite some time. And when we went out to our stakeholders and had a lot of workshops around expectations for who we are as a science center, technology is the word that always kind of rises to the top. We're not dealing with dinosaurs or butterflies. We're squarely in the science and technology realm from a topic perspective. And I think the driving force for us from a technology perspective is kind of twofold. One, I do think there's a guest expectation when it comes to experiences, just to be in that space. I think gaming is really pushing that expectation, especially when you're talking about kids and how they're engaging with storytelling and interactivity these days. So you can't really deny that digital technology kind of structure in your experiences. But also the relevancy piece of it. You need to start building a technology and digital backbone in your experiences in museums that allows for faster and less expensive updating of content and staying relevant, because science is ever changing. So we need to be in a space where it's not every 20 years that we're turning over exhibitions, but we're able to do things in a year or 5 years, or there's a rocket launch we want to show. Like we just don't have that infrastructure at the moment to be able to pull that off.
So from an investment standpoint, what would you say is the driving force for being able to get people on board in order to invest in technology?
Yeah, I think it still kind of falls in line with we're an institution that is majority revenue generated. So ticket sales and driving people to the building to engage with our content is very important. And we are constantly striving to broaden audience, make sure that we have better reach in the community. And I think we know that goes hand in hand with the diverse storytelling and the modern storytelling that we need to be doing in our experiences. So I think it's an undeniable need for investment in that upgrade. We're just seeing drop in attendance the longer we stay stagnant and the less we are kind of out there with new experiences in the market.
Yeah, I would actually say that here in Pittsburgh, it's almost the exact same, right? And one of the challenges that we face is we have a terrific set of museums here. We're a part of a family of museums. There's other great museums in Pittsburgh. And what we found is that a lot of our audiences that, again, we're trying to reach out to, we're about 70% earned income here at the Science Center. And so we have a lot of those same challenges that Abby spoke about, but we also want to make sure that our audiences don't see us as a secondary children's museum in Pittsburgh or a secondary other type of museum. And technology really helps us distinguish us from some of our other museums here in the city.
One of the things that I think keeps coming up in conversation when in all museum communities, when museums are talking about technology is, who's our competition, right? And when we're trying to get people to pay attention to us and to visit us, what are the competing factors? Because at a certain point in time, the competing factors were probably other museums, and I'm not necessarily convinced they are anymore. So from the internal conversations that you all are having at your organizations, what would you say are the forces that you're competing with?
I think in general, you're competing with people's time, and that time, as years have gone on, is getting pulled more and more directions. So it's parents taking their kids to their soccer practice. Philly is a huge sports town, so we have a ton of competition from sporting events. It is a huge nonprofit cultural sector as well. So the amount of museums, historic homes, like the stuff you can do in Philly is vast. So there is a place-based competition, but also it's a really key market in between New York and DC. So we see a lot of the pop-up immersive, the Candytopias, you name it, it's been in Philly. So we're seeing that cycle through as well. So yeah, there is a ton of competition to kind of raise above all the things that are going on in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, same. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things that are taking people's attention. And so it's like, how do we rise above that? And as we're thinking about how we invest in and leverage technology, how do we tie that into our marketing strategies to make sure that our message is out in the public as much as possible?
And how do you see technology helping with that?
So
what I think I'm leaning towards is from, is it a data perspective? Is it a reach perspective? Is it like, how do you use technology in order to know more about your audience or to reach them where they are?
Yeah, I was just listening to the session with the V&A a little bit before this.
Jen.
Yeah, and it's twofold for us: a technology from a supporting of experience perspective, but the data side of knowing who our customer is the side we're lacking. So we're making all these great strides. Hey, we want to have more diverse storytelling. We think that's going to bring in diverse audiences. I'm not sure how we're going to measure that, because we're in a place as an organization where we're not there yet. We have great data as far as like the numbers of people coming into the building, but being able to dial in to like who is coming, repeat visitation, things like that. We have a lot of growing to do in that space.
And as do we. And one of the things that sort of compounds the challenge is that as we're one of 4 Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, so anything that we do from a data perspective and from a, in that way, we have to also get all of our 3 other sister museums bought in and rowing in the same direction, right? So I would say that Mars, when we opened Mars, was really, yes, the next giant leap is the name of the exhibition, but it was really the next giant leap in how we use technology to reinforce the story about the space industry that's growing here in Pittsburgh. We're using it in some of our other galleries to try to, again, reinforce those stories and or take the great stories that we tell in the Science Center about the human-centered side of science and how we take those stories into the community. We're doing terrific work in that segment. The data is definitely a challenge for us. And we definitely have some way to grow with that. And we have some way to grow with that, again, with 3 other sister museums that we have with us also.
From an engagement perspective, I think, well, we have a question from Julia. She said, how do you track the impact of your investment in technology? And is there a metric you find useful?
So yes, I think there's a baseline metric, which is attendance. And, we're an organization where our change and our ability to increase attendance has always come from our special exhibition business. So we haven't invested. We've spent a lot of time investing in that business, and we haven't invested in quite some time in the permanent experience. So the goal here is to bring the permanent experience to an entertainment and education value that's going to compete with the kinds of things that we bring in from a special exhibition perspective. So we're growing that base membership, general museum visitation number. So from a numbers perspective, we'll be able to see what new experiences coming on will do from an attendance perspective. And I think we have tactics from an experience perspective in the space, watching people how sticky things are, what the engagement looks like, what the kind of family interaction looks like. There are some visual metrics to success around experience, dwell time, things like that. So we do a very good job of knowing what those benchmarks need to be and how that improvement needs to be. But the harder part for us is going to be seeing where if the demographic is shifting, what the audience shift looks like, because that's a harder metric for us to measure based on our infrastructure from our systems perspective.
Yeah, and for us, it was definitely attendance. We were hoping to see a certain percentage of increase of attendance when we open a new gallery, because in a similar boat, like our permanent exhibitions, the gallery that we just replaced had been in place for 13 years. And so, seeing an increase in attendance, seeing an increase of membership numbers would also be a piece of a data point we would look at to help sort of support that. We do a lot of, and this is marketing, doing terrific work, but a lot of work looking at like Google reviews and those kinds of things. And what we've seen less and less of reviews about us saying nothing ever changes, or they don't have any new technology, or the Science Center is stale and not relevant. We're seeing less of those comments since we've opened the new exhibition.
I think both of you are talking a lot about attendance and a lot about the physical space. Can you talk a little bit about the digital space and I know that there have been a lot of conversations also in the museum community about what counts as attendance and what counts, and attendance is heads in the door, or is attendance how many people you reach digitally or online. And if we're thinking about and talking about the future of museum technology, I'm hearing a lot about the physical space, but I'm wondering if you can talk a bit more about the digital space.
Sure. I mean, we know that there are people that will never come in our doors. So there's a large portion of audience that we need to be able to reach digitally, because that's where they are. So we have spent a lot of time and investment kind of playing around in the digital space, trying to see what works. So we have a wonderful podcast series that we started last year, as well as a video series. We recently launched a game with Roblox. So we're trying all of these things. I don't see a monetization solution to any of these. These are great outreach tactics, but being able to make money from them or start a business in the digital space. I mean, if we think competition is hard in the physical space, it's exponentially harder in the digital space. So I haven't seen the monetization side of it, but we definitely are seeing the engagement side. And I think it's about finding a balance between reaching the audiences that aren't going to come through your doors and the investment that it's going to take to kind of reach them digitally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, it's like we have two terms. We have attendance and we have impact, right? And we usually mean attendance, heads in the door. Impact is all the people we've impacted physically and digitally, which is a weird way to put it, but it's fine. And it's interesting because we tried really hard to compete in that digital space and monetize that. We hired a consultant. And the consultant said, you know what you should do? You should compete in this digital space and monetize your programs. Like, what were we thinking? Right. Genius. And it did not work. It was not as successful as we had hoped. And again, it's as Abby mentioned, like the competition is thick and it is fierce.
Can you both talk a little more about the monetization part and what your experience is with trying to, or experience in general of monetizing the digital space?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we looked at our education programs. I mean, right out of pandemic, we're like, our education programs, we need to digitize, we need to make those available, we need to put a price tag on those bad boys. And what we found in good old Western PA is that schools and administration were not on board with that from us. And it was weird because sometimes we're like, oh yeah, we'll pay for something from this other for-profit joint, but from you guys, you're a nonprofit. Like, no, you should give us this for free. It's sort of what is the experience that we had. So we just were not successful in doing that.
Our goal with the kind of digital platform we were creating was really trying to make something that was going to be membership based. So seeing we were only in the pilot program with this initial podcast and video series to see where the engagement was and what the numbers look like. Because I think the ultimate thought process was, hey, if we had a membership platform for content that we could draw people to, that would be a per month thing, and we could grow that. But I think we just found that there's so many podcasts, there are so many video series, some of them are free. Trying to put a price tag on that, the production value of what you need to be doing in order to compete in that space becomes unattainable with what you're going to be making from a income perspective.
Yeah, we had a good question from Catherine that said, do you think there is a monetization opportunity for digital experiences if they were of the same quality and level of investment as temporary exhibits? Do you want me to repeat that?
No,
do you think there's a monetization opportunity?
Please don't repeat that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess from a special exhibition perspective, due to the way the business model works, the risk is less. So the amount you would have to invest in the digital space feels like a more risky return than what we know of from a special exhibition perspective. So I don't know for sure if more money equals more engagement, more money on the other side. I can tell you exactly what it'll do with the special exhibition business. So I think that's just probably like an education side. I don't know the answer of that, because if it feels like a more risky investment at those levels from a return perspective.
Mhm.
Marcus.
Agreed.
And is that
Agreed.
because and it's just because you don't know?
Yeah,
It's
right.
because you would have to invest that same amount in order to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Market
again,
research.
the risk with that, like I'm native traveling exhibits world, so I'm like, but in this, I'd be like, it would be way too risky for me.
Yeah, because then there's the marketing dollars perspective. It's very expensive to cut through the noise on a digital platform. There's got to be, to me, the thought process, there's got to be a partnership solution. There are plenty of podcasts out. There's got to be some sort of license or partnership model where there's people that are already doing this well. How do we insert ourselves? How do we get onto YouTube channels with people who already have a following? How do we get onto Roblox? How do we, get partnered in various podcasts? I think there's talent and expertise that comes from our institutions. I think sometimes we feel like we have to be the ones to do everything ourselves. It's like if it's not done by us from top to bottom, then it's not good enough. But I think we can't afford to operate that way, because we don't have the investment structure to be in that space like that. So I feel like there's got to be some sort of, let's find who's doing it well and figuring out how to insert ourselves into that, as opposed to trying to start things from scratch.
There's a question from Ryan that says, do you use expanding digital access as a hook to bring people into the museum, or do you try to make exhibits full accessible online and off?
We have not done full accessible exhibits online yet. That is becoming exponentially easier as you have people building your exhibits in a BIM platform, doing doing an actual model that you can kind of travel through in the digital space becomes a lot easier. So we're definitely looking at those. We use digital, at least as we're talking about it for our collections project, as an engagement tool. So it's how can we get outside voices to help curate our exhibitions? What's that kind of back and forth between our community and our design process? And the digital space is a great place to kind of have those conversations. We do it with workshops as well, but that's kind of how we're thinking about that kind of digital transaction between our guests at the moment.
Yeah, we haven't done a like digital exhibit, like we haven't waded into that. And like, yeah, we have this really cool 3D walkthrough of the Mars exhibit, and it would have been super sick to put it online and make it more accessible. I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have built that into the project from the beginning. There's a lot of things I should have built into that project from the beginning, but yeah.
And speaking of the future, I mean, do you think that that's worth it? Do you see that 3D version of your exhibition in the future being valuable?
I think it depends on the like we're such a hands-on interactivity is such a core component of what we do as an organization. The translation online,
so it depends,
always falls flat. But if we were an art museum, I'd say 100%. There's definitely some cool opportunities, even natural history, like something that has engagement and visuals that make sense with that platform. Not everything works for everybody, I guess, especially in technology. So to me, it wouldn't be something that would make a lot of sense, other than if you wanted to walk through to see what the exhibit looked like.
Right. For us, it wouldn't be quite a one-to-one. It'd be like, this is about 60% of this experience, but you'd still need to come physically to the building to get the full 100% of this experience.
There's a question from Rachel. She says, have you received any feedback, especially from members, regarding what they might want to experience online or digitally? And I think I would expand on that as far as like, have you gotten any feedback from visitors or members about what they would like to experience on site or online from a technology perspective?
Yes, so from a member perspective, those are kind of we call them the true devotees in some sort of like consultant marketing language. They're coming to the building. Our membership is buying memberships to have a physical interaction with our building and our content. So the digital space is much more about what we were hearing from people that were never going to come in the building, who are still looking for really great science content that's entertaining, fun, and educational. And that's what led us to the podcast and video series direction on how we can really try and meet those needs for those that are not coming to the building. From an exhibit perspective, we spend our exhibit process starts in the community. So we do somewhere between 6 and 7 workshops with school kids to start our design process, and they're very open about what they do and do not want in an experience. And they have high expectations. They don't want to read. They want it to be interactive. It needs to look cool. The lighting better be good. The sound better be good. I mean, it gets down to that level of like directness. So they are not looking for everything to be digital. They don't want a giant iPad that they're playing with. They do like the kind of more physical interactives, at least from our consumer base. But we're hearing from an experience perspective that we need to level up for sure.
We heard the same. We actually just for the Mars exhibition for the first time started with community input, which was there's a lot of major shifts with this exhibition. I was hired here. We were going to do this exhibit. We were going to add a lot of this digital component, and we were going to start in the community. And it was like 4 months after the summer of 2020. So there was a lot happening in Pittsburgh at that time. And so we were able to get a lot of that similar feedback. We did focus groups with students, teachers. We are housed in a community here in Pittsburgh that is very diverse and does not really visit the Science Center when they're within a 5-minute walk of us. And so understanding what the people literally in our backyard would want and would encourage them to come into the Science Center. We did ask members, for their feedback. We got some great feedback from members also. But it goes back, and it really ties back into what I was saying about sort of the forces behind the investment in technology is that, like, overall, that was just the expectation from everybody is, yeah, we want to see something, because to take you seriously as a Science Center, you've got to have some level of technology that's engaging and really enhances the experience.
Yep.
So how much do you think personalization or wearable devices will be part of the museum technology toolbox? I'm
personally not a huge fan of wearable technology.
What?
Yeah, I'm excited for AR to Magic Leap, all of that, as that gets better and better and better. I think AR overlay has a lot of potential in a Science Center, but VR is, I don't like putting something over somebody's face where they lose the kind of interaction with the people around them, and it's a throughput nightmare. So
that's true. I think so. Like I think back to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta that has a nice wearable lanyard, and it's got an RFID chip, and you're running around, and I'm seeing all the Indiana University football stuff pop up, which is great because IU football's terrible. So I'm just reminded of that. And I'm thinking, like, these are the things that I'm being asked, like, why don't we do RFID chips? I'm like, maybe it's like, I know that there've been a lot of sort of great advancements in technology that are making that super cool. It's like, I don't know if that works in the Science Center as much as, or as exciting as it seems. You know, I see how they can be kind of cool if to really drive into those personalized experiences. As I'm thinking about how a lot of the people that talk to me, and Abby, you too, you know, you've been in the traveling exhibition world for a while, but like, I always hear, man, what was so cool about Titanic? I got this card and I learned when I die at the end. I'm like, right. The only difference, it feels more personalized. So how do we make the next leap to more personalization? Is that something that's wearable? Maybe, as people think about that, or how do we incorporate some sort of personalized on-site experience that folks get to actually take and have more of an experience outside the building, you know, at home or with their friends or on social media, and how does that exponentially get larger? So,
well, when I think about RFID, what I think about is a user journey. And I think that, and to be honest, I think about Disney. I think about like the way that they have used it in order to allow people once inside their world to do everything that they need to do. So if you have multiple interactives, or if you have places where people can create things, or if you have technology where people can engage with additional digital tools to enhance their experience, you know, the way that you can learn more about what they're doing or how they're doing it is to have them log in once, give them something that then connects all of those experiences throughout the building or even on your website together under maybe their email address. And then you, as an organization, also have information about them. You know, you can figure out what their focus is, or you can ask questions about what are your interests. You can get more information so that you can serve your visitors better. But if you want to personalize an experience, whether it's on site or online, that feels to me like a really good way to start, in the sense that when they buy a ticket, you can get them to possibly say like, yes, I want a wristband or something. Do you know what I mean? And then when they show up, you can hand it to them. They can log in with their email address, and they can do everything that they want to inside your building or your campus, based on that chip. But they can opt into it or opt out of it. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe everybody gets it and they choose to opt out or something. Do you know what I mean?
I think there's a huge potential there. And I think getting back to the systems piece though, like there needs to be a backbone that allows for that kind of level of integration. So it's stuff that we have definitely, as we're creating exhibits, we're making sure the digital infrastructure is there for that kind of experience as we bring enough new things online to make that work. Because yes, I would love to know where everybody went and give them a curated email at the end of their visit that's like, I saw that you spent a lot of time in space and the human body, and here's some curated content that you can dive further, because we just gave you like a glossy surface.
Or you made this thing and like, here's the digital version of it, and then they can keep it and share it on Instagram or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that it gives you a way for them to share their experience, but you can also connect with them after they leave. You can deliver them something after they leave and say, hey, thanks for visiting us. Here's some things that you did, and we want to stay in touch. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking of it from a unification of the visitor journey that can exist online as well as on site, in order to unify those two things, because I don't think it has to be one or the other.
No, I think that's the future of experience.
Right?
The future of experience is that it is, I understood the kind of experience that you had, where your interests lie. Let me continue to feed you more content. Maybe it's a program that we're doing on space later. Maybe it's a podcast that we did. Here's some cool YouTube videos, whatever the case may be. that's the
Because
next
it
level
exists
of
now
yeah.
outside of museums, you know,
Yep.
it exists with retail, it exists with Disney, it exists with those other kinds of for-profit physical experiences.
Right.
One question here from Chad: what is the technology that you end up using in almost every exhibition? Is it because you have the technology and are trying to get a higher ROI, or do you keep using it because it improves audience engagement?
So I'm a big fan of using technology that enhances the story that we're trying to tell. So the only thing that we keep the same is the show control backbone of the exhibit, because we have a show control system. So we're always tying back into that system. But everything else, whether something is a digital interactive or physical, if we were going to do kind of let's email it home or whatever the other layers of technology are, it really depends on what is best supporting the story outcome that we're trying to create. So there's no hard and fast rule, in my opinion, on what technology we use in exhibits. It's just whatever's going to make the storytelling.
But is there something that is there something you find yourself using over and over? Or I think that's kind of the core of his question,
yeah.
unless I'm misreading it.
Here's one for you. Here's one for Chad. We use touchscreens because we know how to do it. Like, that is something that we can do in-house. And with my design and fabrication team, we can employ a touchscreen experience somewhere that helps. Again, it helps support the exhibition, the experience, and it's serves the purpose to tell the story. You know, I think what Abby's getting at is we're not technology in for technology's sake. Like, there is a purpose behind the thing. But like, if that's the question, like the brass tacks of it, my team is great at making a touchscreen interactive. And that's the thing we do more often than something else.
So a driving factor, then, you would say, for the future of technology in museums is based on skills, or
Yes.
based on the skills of the current team that you have.
Right, absolutely. And we already recognize that we've got to either expand the skills of the current team, or we've got to start thinking about what that team looks like moving forward and what skill sets we need.
Yeah, I think skill set it's a great conversation around technology in museums, because it's not just at the end of the day, there's somebody operating this, someone who's maintaining it in your museum. So having a close conversation with your operations team to make sure that you are creating experiences that are maintainable is very key. So that usually dictates the level of technology or the way in which we implement technology in our exhibitions, because we want to make sure if it's technology doesn't mean anything if it's all broken all the time. So there is that balance of making sure, and that's where the VR headsets, that we did that for a while, and that was the biggest headache, and they were always broken and it was a pain. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, right, when it becomes a service to satisfier, like it's actually working against you, right? And how you create that great experience if it's always gonna be broken or whatever. So
Rachel is asking, how do you think we go about prioritizing digital infrastructure in our budgets when not all departments may agree it is urgent or vital?
It's urgent and vital. I mean, I think you have to socialize that need across the organization. It is so important. I mean, we have a very old building. We have a 1930s, 1990s, and a 2014 set of buildings, and we have wires and closets, and it's just a mess. And we're taking a very long time to go through the building and redesign things, but we're just taking it one chunk at a time and doing electrical and digital infrastructure as we need it to support the spaces that we're touching. But you cannot, any future investment should be including digital and electrical infrastructure, because it is going to make your lives so much easier from a upgrade perspective down the line. So it's that initial investment is really important to save on future design needs moving forward. It's just, we've got to get that backbone, start to chip away at it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you're right, you've nailed it. I mean, you've got to just socialize that early and often. So our building is super old. It's 1991 and 2018. So like, but at the same time, like, one of the things we should do a better job of is we've got to think more about that infrastructure at the beginning of any exhibit project. Yep. To make sure that it is properly budgeted, because we did a great job budgeting HVAC and electrical, but then like data, it was like, we could use some data here, maybe. Like, no, really, because this won't be this exhibit forever. At least I hope not. And so not only is it that we're needing to think about that and prioritizing that expense for whatever the new project is, but thinking about projects for the next 30 to 100 years down the road.
Yeah.
Sometime after I retire.
I have a question from Shauna that says, what are some tips that you have for the smaller community museums who don't have IT staff, but want to incorporate technology into exhibitions and programs?
I think that is a great question. I think there are QR codes is I'm very happy that QR codes made a resurgence during the pandemic, because I feel like they were so lame for a very long time, but they have come back. I think there are some technologies that really do enhance, especially for people who want deeper dives, more information on what they're doing. Like, you can add a wonderful extra layer that's not super complicated or tech heavy or support heavy from a technology perspective. Again, if there are partnership opportunities, depending on where you are, getting other people who are technology-based companies to come in and showcase things. Like, we are also places to like invite people in to show what they do. We don't have to do it all ourselves every single time. So that's way to get technology kind of integrated into the museum experience as well.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it all at once. You just got to start somewhere. And even, I mean, my museum is, we're not a small museum. We're not the Franklin, but we're not a small museum. But even we have to start somewhere, like, with new technologies. So yeah, QR codes were not on my the resurgence of QR codes, rather, not on my 2020 bingo card. A lot of things wasn't that one. So I've been eating that crow for almost 3 years now.
I think some of the tips that I would have are to, there's a lot of things out there that don't necessarily cost money. There's a lot of ways to engage. There are a lot of tools that already exist. I think that there's a lot of money spent on things when, for some reason, museums think they have to develop everything themselves from the ground up. And I don't believe that museums need to do that. I think that there are partners and there are ways of finding partners, but there are platforms and there are applications and there are things out there right now that you could brainstorm engagement uses for that I think would not cost a lot of money. The other thing that I think, I'm going to go back to the topic of the future of museum technology, is that a lot of the development work and the things that I'm most excited about at this point don't take a full stack developer to make. There's a lot of development work and a lot of infrastructure and a lot of cloud possibilities where you don't have to be a programmer even. There's lots of drag and drop options for things in order for you to build stuff yourself now. I am not a developer or an engineer, and so there are platforms out there that I can build experiences in from beginning to end without having the experience or a full stack developer do something for me. So finding what those things are, I mean, first figuring out how do you want to engage your audience. I don't believe in technology for technology's sake. I think that you add technology only because it enhances the experience or for a particular reason. But the beautiful thing that I'm seeing in the future of technology right now is that you don't have to be a programmer, and you don't have to be a developer, and you don't have to be an engineer in order to take advantage of a lot of the future of technology. And I think that that's honestly where a lot of platforms and development are going in the future. And I'm really excited about it.
Great.
Anything else from Abby and Marcus? I'm going through the questions.
No, and I think I will echo your point.
This one?
Oh, hit me.
What technology in museums worries you the most?
You know what? Here's one that keeps me up at night after weeks talking with our general counsel's office. One of the things that is interesting and kind of worries me the most is that there's a lot of things possibly come in the future of technology in museums that is going to be collecting a lot of data, and people have a lot of very strong feelings about their data, how it's collected, how it's being used, if we're spying on you with our stuff or weather balloons, I don't know. But like, yeah, data collection and use, and how do we, as we do more in the technology realm, how do we get our guests to come along with us and get comfortable with some of those things? How do we position ourselves maybe even as a place or a platform that engages our audiences about how data is really used and how it's collected and how it's used, etc.
Yeah, I mean, all of our new security cameras have facial recognition software built.
Yep.
I mean, like every new technology has everything in it now. So I think there's definitely a conversation to be had about transparency and conversation with your guest as you're bringing new technology on what you're actually capturing and doing. I will also add, just from like a risk management perspective, everything goes to the internet now. Like, how is your infrastructure set up to protect your institution from what now seems to be a very integrated outside and inside? We talk about PCI compliance a lot. These are things that I am not at all qualified to talk about in any depth, but it is a very important conversation when we think about, hey, I would love to email that thing that I just did on the interactive out to my email, but like, where are your protections as far as that goes? So I think there's a lot of thinking around risk management as well as data collection that needs to happen as we become more and more technologically savvy.
How do you expect AI to change the dynamics in museums? I'm looking at Marcus's face, and I'm just gonna say how excited I am about it. And I think Marcus's face is telling me that he's not. So
we're gonna write all of our exhibit content through ChatGPT. No, I think there's a personalization conversation again with that. I think if used correctly, I think AI could be a really interesting experiential addition to the way in which we approach content, data collection. People could drive what the experience looks like.
I'm thinking about data mining, to be totally honest. I'm hoping that once museums collectively can create open access to their collections and their data and their media, the ability for people to use APIs in order to access that information, but for the use of AI in order to connect those things together in ways that we have never done it before. And I'm not saying that there's any I'm not saying our curators are going away. I am not saying that our storytellers are going away, but I'm saying that there's probably a way that that the Computer History Museum and the Franklin Institute can somehow connect our data together and use AI in order to find patterns and find interests and create stories that maybe hadn't been brought to light before. And I'm thinking that there are so many ways that with museums using open access and making all of their collections and their data accessible, that the way AI is going to be able to look at all of this, the way that our information is going to be able to be scanned and the way that it can inform other things. There's going to be stories that are going to pop up, and there's going to be connections that are going to be made that we just haven't thought of before. And I think that there's a very exciting opportunity with that. But the other thing that I'm thinking around AI and machine learning is about the ability for more data to be more accessible faster, and the ability for us to take our collections and to use things like OCR and speech to text and other ways of being able to make our collections more accessible, to speed up the ability for museums to make their information available so that other people can dive into it and use it and learn from it and create other things anywhere else in the world that could be a game or something commercial or educators or researchers or anybody anywhere in the world. AI is going to give us the opportunity to do what we do best faster. And it's going to give other people the ability to dive into all of the things that museums have had behind closed doors, like with open access. And I'm so excited about the future of AI. And I know that everybody's kind of thinking about ChatGPT and being able to not have to spend less time writing things. I'm excited about that too. I'm just thinking that if I can use it to simplify some of the daily tasks that I have, if I can use it in order to automate some of the things so that I can spend more time over somewhere else, really thinking about the future of technology and museums and what more we can do so that I don't have to write that email, then I'm for it.
Whatever gets me out of writing email, I am 100% behind. That is my campaign slogan. Are you kidding?
I think, yes, I think the efficiency part of it across an organization, not just from an experience perspective, hiring, knowing more data about people's availability and usage during there's just a ton of things that is going to make running a business more automated and easier, which frees up everybody's time to be more creative and do things and think about the future, and releases us from this daily grind of tasks, which
there's a lot of work that museums do that is not about an exhibition. Yes. And there's a lot of work that museums and staff have to do that is not public facing. And there are a lot of ways that I think AI and the future of technology is going to help us create efficiencies and make things easier for all of us to do our work, which is going to free up our time in order to create more experiences for people to come to our museums, whether that's an online experience or an in-person experience.
Yeah.
I only see benefit, and I know that there are so many people that are so worried about it. I'm going to be the AI cheerleader for the rest of my life, I think. I mean, it's check with me in a year, I guess, but I know that there are so many people We're so worried, and there are reasons, there are absolutely reasons to be worried. I absolutely, like, there are things that if every technology that can be used for magic can also be used for evil, I think. So oh, that's Neil just asked, wondering if anybody has used Chat GPT to ask a question today. My guess is no, but if I'm wrong, have somebody pipe in and tell me. Christopher said, has there been any effort to create a shared DAMS aggregating data from multiple museums for the purposes of finding who has what objects or information? Christopher, that's a really good, and I don't know if Marcus or Abby you want to talk about it, but I'm happy to touch on that. Because I see that as the future.
I think we're part of some sort of universal science and technology artifact. Our DAM system, we're replacing it. It sits on somebody's computer in the basement. There's no kind of like access, cloud, anything going on there. But we do, I do not know the name of it, but we are part of a consortium around science and technology museums that gives, you know, what we have digitized and the information that we do have to that universal platform.
I think one of the magic things of cloud adoption, and this was something I think that Catherine was touching on in her conversation earlier with Abby, is that the infrastructure that cloud is going to provide for a lot of museums, and the more museums that can adopt a cloud infrastructure, I think will allow for, in the future, an easier way of aggregating data. When everybody has their own in-house infrastructure, it makes it a lot more difficult for sharing things. And I think that the more that museums can move their infrastructure to the cloud, and the more that museums can benefit from the opportunities that you get from a cloud infrastructure instead of an on-prem infrastructure, it's going to open all of these doors for something like aggregating data from multiple organizations. Either that, or it's going to be somebody else who does it. And I think that the more that museums have a collections management system and a DAM system and create APIs that are going to give developers access to our data and our assets, somebody's going to aggregate all of that together and create something out of it for everybody, if museums don't do it themselves first. We have a couple of minutes left. I've got 11:37 on my timer, and we have until 11:40. I want to see if you have any kind of final thoughts for everybody while we wrap up about driving factors of the future of technology in museums. I mean, from being at the Computer History Museum, being in Silicon Valley, being, you know, right in between Microsoft and Google and NASA, and just the location of our museum, I feel like I get really excited about all of these new things. And I would just love to hear if you have any closing thoughts.
I just think for me, it's just about getting started. It's going to take us a long time to get the whole organization kind of up to date and up to speed from a technology perspective, but we had to start. So we'll open our first new exhibit in the fall, and we'll try and do one a year. And with each exhibit comes learnings, and it comes, you know, upgrading the building. I would also just encourage, I've learned a ton about technology looking outside the museum sector, retail being a great example of kind of some cool stuff that's happening in that space. So I would also encourage just getting outside the museum world and seeing what else is going on, either experientially, programmatically, digitally. But this is a huge amount of work for any size institution, and it's just really about getting started and giving yourself some permission that it's not going to be an overnight like turn of the switch.
all that, and take creative risks.
Yes.
I'm just seeing a couple of things in the chat, something about facial recognition. Yes, if anybody wants to talk about facial recognition, please reach out to me. I have some interesting and fun stories about running facial recognition on an archive collection. I also saw just a moment about what are some of the systems that you are using that you said were easy to use without programming knowledge? I'm gonna have to follow up with you all on that because we're out of time. I'm sorry that I didn't see that question earlier. So I'm happy to talk about that. I don't have any specific systems in mind, but I know that that's the future of where programming is going. And I think it's very exciting. So I want to thank you all again. I'm Heidi Quicksilver. I'm the CIO at the Computer History Museum. Abby and Marcus, do you want to sign off?
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, so much. And Marcus, great to see you both.
Thank you both.
Thanks, everyone.